The truth is, we could make a ton of money if we monetized our customer. If our customer was our product, we could make a ton of money. We've elected not to do that because we don't. Our products are iPhones and iPads and Macs and HomePods and the watch, etc. And if we can convince you to buy one, we'll make a little bit of money, right? But you are not our product.
Over the past few years, Apple has been making some changes to iOS to give users more control over their data. iPhone owners that use Safari can browse more privately, since Apple's browser blocks cross-site trackers. In the App Store, for every app you can now see which data is stored and for which purposes this happens. The upcoming update to iOS 14 will take this even further. Before installing an app, users can choose to either opt in or opt out of data collection and tracking. This change will have a far-reaching impact on, among other companies, Facebook's business. Facebook users are often passive and unconscious of the extent to which they are tracked. And because of this, the company is able to supply advertisers with large amounts of very specific consumer profiles. So if every iOS user can choose to opt out of this tracking, many will probably do so. And even if a small percentage of users chooses to opt out, this will already have great impact because iPhones make up 15% of the smartphone market. For this reason, Facebook has stepped up their campaign against Apple's new policy. Last December, newspaper readers across the United States were surprised to see 2 page-wide advertisements by Facebook. They claimed that the new privacy feature coming to iOS would be devastating, not for Facebook itself, but for small businesses. Although it's fun to watch a war unfolding between some of the world's largest companies, we should be careful about picking a side. For Apple, privacy is something they love to advertise with. Could it be that Apple profits from their stance in this conflict? Are they really doing everything in their power to protect user privacy? And most importantly, does Apple really care about privacy? Over the past decade or so, a number of events have shined a light on the massive data collection practices that tech companies are now involved in, and on how this can impact people's lives. For Apple, it was the large leak of celebrity nude photos from iCloud in 2014. They quickly announced improvements to the security of iCloud. The role of Facebook in the voter manipulation scandal involving Cambridge Analytica raised the public pressure for data protection even higher. As a result of these and other scandals, privacy became an important factor for any company involved with technology. In 2018, new and strict data regulation was launched across member states of the European Union, which meant that companies couldn't just say they handled data carefully, they now had to comply with laws telling them how they should do this. Of course, it can be debated whether all of this has led to fundamental change. Facebook, for example, is still planning to further integrate Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp by sharing user data between the services. Google has been fined 50 million euros because of a lack of transparency and no valid legal basis to process data. For Facebook, Google and many others, data collection is a key pillar for how they operate. They collect as much user data as possible so that advertisers can pay them for very specifically targeted ads. This has put them into an awkward position. They need to publicly declare privacy an important value and they have to comply with strict laws telling them to protect user data, while in the meantime they need to collect data to make money. For Apple, this is not the case. Apple's revenue comes mostly from selling iPhones and MacBooks. If they implement some policies to increase data security, their revenue is not at risk. So whereas other tech giants now had to convince the public they cared about privacy, Apple could with very little effort take up the role of privacy advocate. As the public pressure for data protection increased, Apple was probably more than happy to fulfill the role of the only tech company caring about privacy. In fact, this has probably made them money. Google's Android, Apple's most prominent competitor when it comes to smartphone software, is much less transparent about data collection and user tracking. Without a doubt, this has to do with the fact that Google needs to track users and collect data about them to make money. This makes it very unlikely that we will see the same data transparency in Android as we are seeing in iOS. So now Apple has given people who care about privacy a new reason to buy an iPhone. And once you've convinced someone to buy an iPhone, they will probably buy more Apple products because of the ecosystem. So at a time when privacy was becoming more important for people, Apple looked in the mirror and said, we don't have to sell data if we can sell privacy. Consider this. If Apple cares so much about privacy, why is Google still the default search engine on iOS devices? Sure, you can go into your settings and change it to another one that doesn't track you, but most people just stick to the default setting. So why has Apple not chosen DuckDuckGo, a search engine that doesn't collect any user data, as the default? Well, because a contract prevents them from doing so. Apple is working together with, you guessed it, Google. Apple makes Google the default search engine on iOS devices, and in exchange for this privilege, Google pays Apple billions of dollars in advertising revenue each year. It's a very profitable deal for both parties. For Apple, the revenue share they receive equals around 15 to 20% of its worldwide income. Google estimates that in 2019, 50% of its search traffic came from Apple devices. In a more general sense, we should be aware of the role that Apple plays in the way big data is turned into big cash. The opt-in or opt-out feature coming to iOS may look like a strong flex, but it really doesn't help that much compared to what Apple could do. Apps that profit off of the collection of user data are still available from the App Store. There is nothing stopping Apple from banning data-hungry apps from their devices. If Apple had said from the start, if you want to operate on iOS devices, you can't collect user data, then all of these apps that exploit users for ad targeting would have had to reinvent themselves. They would have had to look at their business model and think of other ways to make money. But that's not what Apple did. They probably looked at the commission these apps bring in and said, we're good. Which is fine, but they shouldn't pretend to care about privacy so much. Now you may say, isn't it good that Apple is at least doing something? And to that I say, yes it is, for sure. The fact that Apple is introducing a way to instantly opt out of data collection by apps is unprecedented and will make it harder for Facebook, Google and others to collect massive amounts of user data without people noticing. As we can conclude from Facebook's aggressive counter-campaign, this will have an impact on the data economy we are seeing today. But to be fair, this doesn't make Apple a more moral company. It just shows the lack of morals from others. The industry standard for privacy has been raised because of some scandals, public pressure emerging from these, and new regulations. But that standard is still pretty low. Privacy statements are often designed to be misleading, for example by hiding important information behind several clicks. In many cases, users are required to agree with a privacy policy in order to use a service. And about that new privacy law in the EU, tech companies kind of struggle with it. All of this means that when a large tech company does anything that actually improves data security, it already looks amazing. But we should not forget that Apple is as deep into the data economy as the others. When Apple noticed that privacy was becoming more important for users, there was one question on their minds. Can this make us money? The answer was yes, obviously, so they started profiling themselves as the only company in Silicon Valley that protects your data rather than stealing it. But in the meantime, they kept shaking hands with the companies involved in the stealing. Apple may want to be seen as a privacy advocate. The contracts they sign tell a different story. A story in which Apple plays an important role in turning big data into big cash. Keep this in mind the next time you hear Tim Cook say that privacy is in Apple's DNA. That's it for this one. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.